So I'm going to start the session. Welcome to everybody. This is our Victorian Home with 21st Century Insulation webinar. It's run as part of the Open Eco Home series of Open Homes events. This is run by Cambridge Carbon Footprint. Just in case any of you are less familiar with Zoom, there's controls that should be at the top or bottom of your screen that control how you're seen and how you see things. You should all be muted at this point. Please, can everybody stay muted? It just makes less background noise so that you can all focus on what the presenters are saying. We do want to hear from you though. There will be 3 question and answer sessions, and at that point we will ask you to unmute yourselves, and you can unmute yourself and ask the questions. You can also submit questions in the chat. Nicole, one of my co-hosts, will be fielding questions. There she is. And she will, as I said, ask you to unmute yourselves at the appropriate time. So I'm Clare Waters. I'll be hosting the session. As I said, Nicole will be fielding questions. The homeowners today are Zoe and Samin. Thank you very much to them for their time. They'll be doing most of the talking today, and they'll give you an idea of how their session will run at the beginning. But as I said, there will be built in some time for questions. At around 5 minutes to 3, I'll wrap up the event. We've got a 1 question poll that I want everybody to answer. And also I'll let you know about a few other events that we're running. We will be posting the presentation slides and the recording of this session to the event webpage, and we'll also email that out to yourselves. So, you know, if you don't want to be included in that recording, just comment in the body of your question or suggestion that you would rather not be unmuted and called upon to ask your question yourself. And I will hand over to Zoe and Samin now.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Zoe and this is Samin, and we welcome to our tour of our Victorian family home that has 21st century insulation. So there's 4 of us four humans who live in the house, 2 adults and 2 teenage children, and we've also got 2 cats, 3 chickens and a hamster. And today's talk is just basically about our journey when we for retro eco renovating our house, and what we did and how we did it. So we'll start with kind of an overview, then we'll give you the technical details, and then there's a conclusion. And so after the overview, then there'll be a chance to ask any questions, similarly after the technical section. So yes, you can see, so the front of our house, this is the front of our house, and you can see that it's unusual in that it's set back from the road. So a lot of the terraced houses in our street come straight onto the road, but our house is set back, which gave us a lot of advantages. And then the photo on the right is the rear view of the house as it is now, as you can see. Yeah. Okay, over to Samin.
Okay, cool. Oops. Okay, so the first section of our talk. So so this is oops, oh no. Yeah, so these are photos of the house before. So when we moved into the house, so this is kind of photos taken around June 2017. So as you can see, it's a Victorian infill terrace. It's in city centre. It's kind of a completely very urban environment. So you know, it was, when we moved in, we had just our daughter, who was a year and a half,
at the time,
one and a bit old. And so now we're a family of 4, and you know, it's a great house. It's a Victorian house, late Victorian. It was a great house for a family to live in. But equally, it had the Victorian disadvantage of having kind of a very poor eco footprint, and also very poor comfort standards. So we spent, so that's again a photo of the front of the house on the left, and a photo of the back of the house on the right. And the middle one is, this is the back room, where I'm sitting in the corner there. It's the back room. And this is kind of, we call it the back room. It's where we still spend most of our time. It's kind of an L-shaped room. There's a kitchen on the right-hand side behind that pillar. And where I'm sitting would have been where the dining area is, and in front of it is where kind of our living space is. So this was kind of our main room for living in, and we, I mean, essentially the entire house in the winter was very cold and very damp. In the summer, parts of it were very, very hot. It's kind of parts of the house were really uninhabitable. And I would say we kind of gave up heating the house because, you know, all the heat from the radiators would just go up through the roof, which was completely uninsulated, go up through the roof, out of the windows. And what we did in the end was we bought a wood burner and installed it in the living room. And that's where we spent most of our time there, and the kitchen was there. So it kind of worked. But I suppose 10 years into it, 10 years into living there, we kind of finally had the guts to think, oh, okay, you know, we've been uncomfortable for this time now. We need to start doing something about it. Anything else to add, Zoe?
Yes, so just say we moved into the house in February 2005, and then the work actually started. So we started thinking about it probably in 2014 or so. The work started in 2017. I know we've got that on later. Okay, good.
Yeah. The other thing to note about this is, the other thing I want to mention is because you can see the windows are double glazed, but they're all gone. And the house had very, very poor insulation. The roof here is completely uninsulated. You could go there, you could put your hand in to change the bulb in the ceiling, and you would touch the slate roof. And similarly at the back here, you know, in the middle room here, you can see there's kind of like this glass,
just feel the draft,
glass and wooden kind of structure, and it was great for light, but you would just feel the draft coming through. And you can notice there's a cat flap there as well that, you know, didn't help at all either.
So generally there are lots of things that were wrong with the house, I think is what we'd say. Yes. Okay. So so what we wanted to do is we initially decided that we wanted to do just insulation. We thought that would be good, but we really wanted to get some architects involved. And so we met with a couple of architects, but AC seemed to be really on the ball in terms of eco renovation and seemed to really know what they were talking about. So what we did is we this
whole thing took us 2 years.
So starting in about 2014, 15, we started going to a lot of talks that were given by we went to some open eco homes, also some super homes, and we also went to various talks by Cambridge Carbon Footprint about insulation and about various different things. And so we spent quite a long time thinking about it, and then we eventually met with the architects. And the first thing they did was a complete survey of the house. And to find out what it was, what was there, what wasn't there. And then we kind of, we started really thinking, okay, well, we need to insulate our walls. But then, of course, if you're going to insulate the walls, then you need to do something about the windows. And obviously, you've got to do something about the roof. And then kind of finally, they said, well, you've got to do something about the floor. And we thought, well, if we're going to do something about the floor, then we may as well redo all our drainage and things like that, because we had issues with the downstairs toilet blocking and things. And we had all sorts of bodges in terms of other bits of things to do with pumps, to do with hot water and things like that. So it kind of started with insulation, but then kind of got further and further onwards. With
and as I said, insulating too. We were just thinking just the roof and the windows, and then we went to walls, and then really the last thing was the floor. When it's thought that the floor is the least the least marginal gain, but we thought, while we're doing all this thing, and the thing in our house is, we'll show you a plan later on. The thing in our house is some of the house has, because of its setbackness, some of the house has non-party walls. So on the side, so those part of the house couldn't be insulated externally with external insulation. So we'll talk about that in a bit. So the other thing to mention here is that so our architect had. So they kind of took a year to survey the place, come up with a proper plan. We had many iterations. So we were a young family then. So we have teenagers now, but they were very small then. And so it would take us time to, they would send us an email, we'd say, oh, the email's arrived, and then various things would happen, and then 2 weeks later we'd reply to them. So it took us maybe a bit more time than maybe it would take people, but it really took the whole thing took a year before they got a plan together. And then they asked us, they essentially wrote a spec for builders to bid on. And they suggested several builders. They asked us whether we knew any, so we knew a couple of as well. And in the end, we went with RWD builders, who AC had worked with before. And AC really kind of understood how to implement AC really understood what to do in terms of reducing carbon footprint and upgrading a Victorian home. And the builders, RWD, really understood how to implement that. So they'd done these things before, they'd worked with AC before. So they really understood what we were trying to do. I think that's very important.
Yes. So I think we were very lucky in that sense, because I think not all builders understand that. So that's definitely something to look for.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see that. So these are just a couple of videos of during the construction. Sorry?
Photos.
Oh, did I say videos? I was thinking of the next slide, sorry. So you can see that at the front, there's the scaffolding, and you see that they uncovered quite a nice arch on the left side, on the right-hand side of the house, which is where there used to be a passageway through to the back, which had been filled in by previous owners and made into the downstairs bathroom. And then you can see this is the back of the house. So where in that first photo where Samin was sitting, he was sitting about here, but you can see they've basically taken the back off the whole of the house here to rebuild that part. So that was, so the first few months when we kept going back for our on-site visits with the architect, there was less and less house to see. And what you also can't really see here is how deep they dug down. So they dug down to a depth of about 1 meter to dig out all of the old stuff, which we'll talk more about later. So it was a really quite extensive job. And so I think we haven't mentioned it yet, but we moved out for 8 months during the course of the work, because obviously we couldn't have lived here. And then that's a view from the back at a similar sort of stage. You can see that half of the back here is off. The main part of the house is still there, but that half part is off.
But that goes well.
Yes. Good. So we've actually got some slides. It's just some slides now of kind of the construction of the house. Like series of photos, just to give you an idea of what it looked like and what happened.
So right from the beginning to the end. This is in terms of time. Yeah.
So this is like terms of time and different bits. So it starts with the front of the house, then goes to the back of the house. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, this is all the front. This is the roof being replaced at this point. And that's our solar panels going on in the front, and we have some on the back as well. So we're a east-west facing house, and this is the external insulation going on in the front, and the windows have gone on as well, windows and doors. So they're triple glazed units, and that's the render going back, new render going up back on top. So that's kind of the front done.
And then if you look at the back now, yeah. So this is the destruction part. And then you can see they're building a new roof on top of the old roof, which we'll talk more about later.
Again, the windows have gone in here. And the back,
and then the doors.
Again, these are triple glazed.
And the insulation. And that's the inside, which
goes from there to there, and then there. That's our kitchen, or was our kitchen. So this is a non-party wall, that part of the wall. So once we kind of worked out that, if we're going to insulate that, we'll have no kitchen for a while. So we really, at that point, it was really final that we'd have to move out.
So now you can see the insulation there and the floor insulation.
This is the floor going back in.
And then there's the new kitchen going in, and that's the end of the inside.
Final, yeah.
This is the front again, the front room, and the downstairs bathroom and the floor insulation.
That's the front, I think, that's it.
Yes, that's the end.
Yeah.
So that was quite quick, but you'll all have this PowerPoint, so you can look through it much.
And it might spark some questions
at your leisure later. Oops.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's it. Yeah.
So I think. Oh yeah. So then so we'll just quickly look at the after. So so we'd moved out in the 1st of July 2017. We moved back in February 2018, which you may or may not remember. It was the time that the Beast from the East was here in Cambridge, and it was very snowy and extremely cold. And it was amazingly warm in the house. It was just fantastic. We moved back in, it was warm, it was light, it was dry. We could use all the house, and immediately we noticed the difference, and it was just amazing how much difference it made.
Yeah, and I think the in the middle photo here, so that's that's our main living area. Previously nobody wanted to sit on that far end of the dining table because it was very, very cold. And when we moved in February, it was I was standing by the back door looking at the snow outside, and there's nothing. There's no it's just very, very warm now. It's also very quiet. So the triple glazing and the insulation, it's amazing how quiet the house is from the inside. So you mentioned the kind of, we use much more of the house more of the time. So there were parts of the house before, like the front room and the loft, which were really unusable.
Because it was so cold and
they were damp and cold. And we use much more of the front room now. The loft is a much more pleasant place to be in. What else? So we've gained because of some of the restructuring of the house, we've gained more space. Like there's no radiators on the ground floor, for instance.
Because we have underfloor heating.
We have underfloor heating, but that's kind of a consequence of, it wasn't something in the plan originally. It was something that we're digging up the floor, we're putting insulation in the floor, so we might as well put heating there as well. For us, the house is a much cheaper house to run. Our electricity and gas bills fallen a bit. Again, even though we're heating more of the house constantly, our kids are older, so they're having a lot of hot showers now instead of not having showers anyway. So we're actually using much more water, much more heated water. But despite all of that, our bills are down.
Something that someone was talking about earlier, we reused all of our floorboards, but they were ours to begin with. So we had our own floorboards, and then we kept them and reused them. But other things, yes, so we kept all of our white goods. Most of them are still working, some of them aren't anymore, we had to get new ones. But just things like the fact that now we don't have a water tank in the loft, we've got our big water tank downstairs, which we'll talk about later. And as Samin said, we've got more space, and so we've gained things like an understairs cupboard, which is really useful, which we didn't have before. So there's lots of things. Yes. Anyway, so I think that's the end of the first section. So if we want to take any questions now, I'm just trying to find the chat. Where's the chat?
So we've got some questions from Caroline, I believe. Caroline, would you like to unmute yourself? So Caroline wanted to ask about underfloor heating. Underfloor heating. What type did you install, and how quickly does it warm up the house?
So it's kind of normal underfloor heating, as in there's hot water going through.
It's just pipes,
pipes. So pipes are laid out in kind of a zigzaggy, not zigzag, but kind of a looped
yes.
kind of matter. And it's nothing. Yeah, it's kind of a normal underfloor heating system. I can't remember the manufacturer or the maker or anything like that. But it's nothing special. And how quickly does it heat up? I think it's actually parts of the ground floor which are wooden, they take the old floorboards. They take longer to heat up because the heat has to go through that wood. But whereas parts of the ground floor which are tiled, they heat up very quickly. You can really feel it on your feet very quickly. But I would say it's not just the floor, it's the entire house being insulated, you know, the walls and the windows and doors being insulated so well. It's about the entire kind of atmosphere, you know, the entire environment on the ground floor as well.
Yeah, it's warm.
Does that answer your question, Caroline? Or would you like to follow up on that?
Oh, she's muted.
No, I'm not muted. Am I muted?
Oh, no, you are now.
You're unmuted now.
I thought you were, yes.
No, I think that was fine. Was it difficult to find somebody to put the underfloor heating in for you?
No, our builders did it.
What? Your builders did? Okay.
Yeah. But they did it, yeah.
That's great, thank you. And Jane also had a question about builders.
Yes, what were the other builders that they recommended to you apart from RWD?
The other builders, so we had put in Green Hat.
Somebody had recommended Green Hat to us.
Yes.
Somebody had done a super home elsewhere in Cambridge, wasn't it?
Yes. And then they recommended Andrew.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember his surname. I can't remember.
Andrew something.
Boyd?
No.
No, I can't remember who it was.
I can find that.
We can find out,
yeah.
and we can tell Sarah, Claire, and then she can send it when she sends out the.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I asked my architects about that, and they said, well, that I should, you know, who would I like to? And I'd asked the recommendations, but I hadn't really, nothing came forward. So it's quite good to know who have done the eco before, because I'm not sure if the you know what the architects are thinking or not thinking.
But I would imagine if you're with an architect who's done this kind of work before, they would have a list. I mean, you know, the list, the number of builders that our architect recommended was only 3 or 4, 2 or 3 or 4. It wasn't that.
That's what I thought. But that would be lovely to have that later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay.
There's also a question from Ed about installation, but I think we're coming on to installation. So if we can hold off on installation questions until after that section, that would be really helpful.
Yeah. I did have another question, if that's all right. Did you build right up onto the neighbour's wall in the back bit?
Well, because our house is set back, the back part. Oh, actually, no, that's not true. The part that's behind us here, which is the part where they took it down, that does go onto the neighbour's wall. Yes, but our wall was built onto the neighbour's wall previously.
So you didn't use the neighbour's wall. You had your own wall, and then
we had our own wall, which actually had to be taken down and then put back up again. But on the other side, there's no party wall on that side because the neighbour's house has already finished. Then we didn't change the footprint of our house at all. So the area we live in is still the same. You'll see a picture of a plan of the house actually in a bit.
Okay. Thank you very much.
That's okay.
Great. And then I think we can squeeze in one more. Byron has asked about energy standards. So Byron, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the host directly?
Thanks. Hi, I just wondered, in the brief, was it ever considered an energy standard or benchmark, for example, passive house or EFIT or anything?
Yeah, so we read about passive house and things like that, and various things like that. We didn't go for anything particular, but I think our so to have a passive house, you really need to rebuild your house. You can't retro fit into a passive house standard. You just can't get that kind of level of insulation. And so because we didn't really want to change the structure of the house that much, that would have meant even more kind of destruction. So for us, the level of kind of detail in the plan was enough to know that there was a lot of insulation going on.
And it was the best, really.
And it was the best. Yeah, it was much better than standard building regs require. yeah, and you know, kind of essentially all the space that we could allocate to insulation, we did.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I think we can carry on with the presentation.
Okay, so if we move to the technical section
Yeah.
now, then, so we just I'll just move the chat over here a bit because we don't usually see people. Okay, so we'll look through the technical things now. So Samin, do you want to do this one because you did this one before?
So this is a plan of. Let's put my notes up. Yeah. So briefly, so this is a kind of a plan. You're not meant to read the words, or I'm not going to ask you questions about it in the end. So this is a before and after of the ground floor. And essentially what you want to see here is at the bottom is the front of the house, at the top is the back of the house. The grid, for instance, the grid like rectangle in the bottom right of each of them is the path coming into the front door. And really what all you want to see is the difference between the two is the blue lines and the red lines on the right hand side. So the dark blue lines are thicker insulation, thicker, cheaper ones. And the red, so that you can see is on the back, on the top left, so the back of the house.
On the side, yeah.
On the side, and on the bottom right, on the side of the house, on the side and along the front, and also on the outside, and also along the back on the outside. So they're on the back. So sometimes the blue, the thicker, cheaper insulation is on the inside. So like here, the back of the house, the side of the house here, it's all on the inside. And sometimes it's external. So outside, it's all external. Outside on the back, it's all external as well. The thin red line, so here, essentially it's in the kitchen area, is much thinner, much more expensive, so aerogel insulation. And the kind of, I can't remember, I don't have on hand, I don't have the price on hand right now, but the kind of the unit, the insulation kind of varies from kind of 0.17 watts per U, kind of a U value of 0.17 on the external one, and the thin internal one is 0.8. So in this case, the less is better. Essentially, it means this much energy is going through the wall. It will allow this much heat to go through the wall. So it's kind of, it's not double, it's kind of more. It's 4 times worse. But it's really, it's still very good, of course.
Yes.
But it's the the thin red one is 4 times worse for what you get.
So we should move to the next slide to talk about the actual thickness. So the external insulation, move back to that one there, because it tells you what the details are. So the external wall insulation is Kingspan Cool Therm, and that is 100. So that's on the front and back at the of the house. On the outside, the external pink insulation that you could see, and that's 110. I know Ed was asking about this. That's 110 millimeters thick above the damp proof course and 90 millimeters thick below the damp proof course. And then the thin aerogel that Samin was just talking about, that's together with the plaster. Oh, yeah, here it is here.
On the left-hand side here. So.
On the left side, that is the aerogel, and that's 39 millimeters thick, including the plaster. And then so various places inside. So this is in our daughter's bedroom. We have this Celotex insulation where there was space for it. So there's this downstairs as well, and some places.
That's around, that's 110.
Which is 100 millimeters. And then in the hall, it was only 75. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea about
how much space it takes up.
Like how much space it takes up. Yeah. Good. So that's the internal insulation. And then, should we talk about the roof as well? So the roof Have we got a separate slide? No, we haven't.
Yeah,
got
we
that.
do. Yeah,
Oh, we've got that one. Okay, so we'll leave the roof for a minute and go on to that. So you could also see downstairs we had a lot of damp proofing work done, which was done by Anglia Property Preservation, because there were lots of, as we mentioned at the beginning, a lot of damp areas in the house. And so this is essentially a plastic layer. It's a kind of whitish plastic layer with these red button things which hold it on. So that's the damp proof layer that's on the walls as well. So now, Samin, you can talk about the roof then.
Yeah, so the roof, again here, the thing to note is the blue line. So I haven't done the before thing because essentially the before plan is there's no insulation at all. The roof was a very, very bad place to be. The loft was a very bad place to be. It was very cold in the winter, very, very hot in the summer. So essentially kind of the architect kind of specified that there was insulation put in on the walls and on the ceiling. And I'll show you next what kind of she was very excited about, in fact. So normally, if you kind of have a normal kind of terraced house, the only thing that architect can do, or the only thing you can do, is to put insulation in between the rafters. So that's in the photo on the left. You can see there's the rafters, and there's a kind of insulation inside between them. But because our house is set back a bit, the architect Anne was very excited. She said, "Oh, I've never had this opportunity before to do this, but we're going to kind of put insulation in the rafters and then over the roof as well." So you can see on the photo on the right here what's happening. There's the roof slats, and there's insulation going on top of it as well. So essentially there's another roof sitting on top of our roof, which is just the insulation. And it's kind of, so she was quite excited about that. So just the kind of the spec, so there's like 50 mil insulation between the rafters here, and 80 mil kind of on top of the roof.
So the whole roof was raised in the end by about 15 centimeters, and that was something that the planning people were fine with, because our house is different from all the other houses. The fact that our roof line wasn't in line with everybody else's was no problem.
It was kind of an advantage.
So we were really lucky actually that we could do that again.
Yeah.
That's not something you can do with every house.
Yeah. Floor, so floor. So floor was kind of the last thing. But in fact, while I remember this, and while we were thinking about, we kind of nearly had finalized the plan of what to do, and it's about to go to tender. And I read a study, I think it was a King's College London study or something like that, about, actually the floor insulation is kind of being underreported a bit. And actually it's much more effective than you think. But I think we'd already had in our mind that, while everything is happening, we might as well do the floor. So the builders kind of,
also there's no damp proof.
Yes, so actually, so there's no, it's kind of a traditional Victorian house. If you take the floorboards up, there's the earth. There's no foundation or anything. In fact, what the builders found was that there was no damp proof at all in the house, damp proof course at all. So what happened instead was that they dug a meter deep. They put in a damp proof course. They put in a concrete slab, 125 mil concrete slab. Then they put in insulation. So there was like 120 mil kind of the thick insulation going in. Then screed on top of that, and the heating pipes went in that, and then the old floorboards went back on top.
Which we'll see the floorboards. But if you look at this slide here, the second one from the left, you can see where the stairs start. Now, normally that's obviously where the floor is, but this is after they've put in the concrete layer and the yes, I think it's just the concrete, isn't it? Then, so they dug down a long way. And here are our floorboards. So this floorboard spent 6 months out in the garden.
So as well as the white goods and lots of other things.
Oh, and you can see our radiators there as well.
So they're all stored there.
Yes, everything was stored in the garden.
And our kitchen.
And yes, the kitchen, but the kitchen didn't survive. And then once they were ready, they brought the floorboards back in, and then they lit the wood burning stove to dry everything out. And so they didn't fix the floorboards until they were certain that they'd dried out. And actually it's so much better now, because the floorboards before had lots of gaps in between them, and we always used to lose Lego and things down them. But actually now there's no gaps between the floorboards, which is brilliant. So so they checked the moisture every week or so, I think, didn't they, for that? Okay.
Yep. Okay. So PV system. People might be interested in this. So here's the kind of as I mentioned before. So the house is facing east-west, and a long time ago, I think like more than kind of maybe in 2010 or so, we'd had somebody come around to look at PV panels for us, and they said, "Oh, you're not a south-facing house. It's no use having PV panels." But this time, when we were planning all this, somebody came around and said, "Oh yeah, it's fine," because the thing is, PV panels, the price had dropped so much of them, and they were much more efficient, and they were. And they said, "Oh, it's fine. You can have them, on the front, on the back for the morning, and on the front for the afternoon, and it should be great. It'll be fine. It'll be great." So that's what we did. We went for a SunPower. It's a 4K array SunPower photovoltaic system, and there's 6 on the back and 6 on the front. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, I'll talk about this one. Yeah. So this is my plan of how the PV system works. So we've got the PV, the cells, the solar cells, so they generate the electricity. The electricity is generated as a DC, so direct current, but it has to be converted into AC for use in the house. So this is what this big converter is here.
That's in the loft.
That's in our loft, which is out of the way up there. So then the thing that first happens is that if the house is needing any electricity, then that goes straight into there. If the house's needs have been met and there's still electricity left over, then we've got this enormous hot water tank downstairs underneath the stairs. It's 2 meters tall, so it's very big, and that stores the energy as water. So it's got an immersion heater at the bottom, and it stores the energy as hot water. And as we said before, we use a lot of hot water, so that's very efficient. And then finally, if the hot water is at the right temperature, then the electricity goes back to the grid. So if you have a look at and so we get what's called the feed-in tariff, so the FIT payment, the feed-in tariff payments. We've had payments every single quarter ever since we moved in, even in the winter. And so even when the weather's not very good, so say over the winter time, we still get £25 a month. We've had something like £220. Oh, sorry, per quarter, sorry. Yeah, okay. So we've had something like £220 per quarter, in total since we moved back in.
Yeah. And again, you wouldn't do this, we didn't do this for
to get the money.
To get the money. Yeah. I think our purpose was to use the kind of the energy that's available to us, to all of us, and to use it for our purposes without kind of taking kind of electricity off the grid. So we don't have a battery. I don't know, people might be interested to know. We don't have a battery right now. At that point, batteries were quite expensive. I think their prices come down a bit, and maybe it makes some sense to get one. Particularly, it seems that we currently export back to the grid nearly as much as we use. So actually, I just came up with those numbers a couple of months ago. And so it makes a lot of sense actually for us to have a battery. So it's despite so we can store. So that's despite us using hot water. Yes. To heat the hot water, use it for the hot water.
So we've just got, let's just check. Yeah. So we've got one more slide before the next question. So just looking at the heating system. So we've got a gas boiler. We went for a gas boiler despite the fact that gas boilers are maybe going out. Because we thought that was the best option at the time. It's very neatly fitted. You can't really see from the picture, but it's actually very neatly fitted on the wall. Very close to the ceiling in the kitchen, so it doesn't take up any space, which is really good. And then you can see here's the hot water. So this is inside a cupboard, but you can see how big it is. The tank, it's a massive tank. We've also got.
So it's a 2 meter tall tank, and it's got 300 liter. So it's an unvented high pressure hot water system. That's kind of one of the things we wanted of the house as well, to upgrade the services while we're doing all the kind of this kind of work. So it sits kind of in a small cupboard between the kitchen and the downstairs toilet, and we had to move the toilet in order to fit it in there.
But also, so then we have on all our radiators, so upstairs in the first floor and in the loft, we've got these controllers, the Honeywell controllers, which are radio controlled. So then we have a controller here downstairs where we can set the temperature for all the rooms in the house at different temperatures.
So this is a Honeywell Evo home system, and our architect was quite kind of happy with this. There are many others available. But what this lets you do is you can divide your house up into areas. So downstairs, for instance, we have a kind of a kitchen, living room area. We have a front room area. We have a hall area. And then you can set different time periods and different temperatures for each of the areas. And it's quite, so we're on the ground floor, we don't have radiators anymore, but the rest of the house has radiators.
And they're the old radiators.
They're the old radiators, ones, yeah. And then there's quite the Honeywell system. You just retrofit this radio controlled mechanical kind of controller on it. And via radio, it talks to the controller. And so it knows when to come on and when to come off.
Yeah, and you can hear it coming on in the morning. It's the time for it to come on. If it's below 12 degrees or whatever, then it comes on. Yes, that's that. Okay, so that's the technical section really. So we finished that. So does anybody have any questions like from the technical things?
Emily wanted to ask about if you've did an EPC after the retrofit. So that's
Yes. Yes, I can talk about that now. I was going to mention that in the end. I will talk about that already. So we called the retrofit people in, the EPC people in, some of them, and I thought, yes, we were very excited. We get an A straight away. So it's like going to go into an exam with having done all the prep you needed, and I think it came back as a B, and I was quite disappointed. But I knew that there's something kind of wrong with it's not something kind of wrong. There is something wrong with the EPC, how it measures energy efficiency of a house. Because, for instance, when the person came to do the rating, he asked us, "Is this a new extension?" It didn't really matter. I mean, the whole house had been gutted and rebuilt, and he was asking whether the back room was a new extension. And then he went to the back of the house, for instance, and he took his ruler out and he said, "Oh, you've said that there's 110 external insulation here." I said, "Yes, there is." And he said, "But on my ruler, I can only measure 10 mil. And I said, because what he was measuring was the difference between the fake slip bricks and the external render. And I said, well, you can't see, underneath the render is 110 mil of insulation. And can you not write that down? He said, no, my form says I need to go to the back of the house and measure the difference between the wall and the external part of the wall. So, I was really very impressed with, he had a very standard way of doing things. There was no chance for us to actually say what we'd done. There was no because
there was no looking at the plans.
There was no looking at the plans.
Yeah.
There was he didn't ask whether we had, the difference between double and triple glazed. There was nothing like that. So, so we got a B, and like all exams, sometimes you just have to. You're still
sore about getting a B.
So we just have to kind of take the B and we'll go with it.
Yes.
And Byron, would you like to unmute yourself? Byron wanted to ask about alternative heating options.
Yeah.
So, Byron?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the question was quite self-evident. So if you...
So I think heat pumps, you need quite a lot of area. So we didn't go.
Someone said you need the same area in your garden as you have in your house to do the heat pump. So so for us, I mean, our garden's relatively large for our street, but it's not that big.
Yeah.
So you do need quite a big area, I think, for a heat pump.
Yeah. So I think the heat pump was kind of out. And the other thing I guess we could have done was to have turned the wood burner into some kind of a heat source as well, for heating the water, for instance. That would have, we could have done that. We could have been possible, but then actually we don't actually use the heat burner anymore that much. It's mainly for decorative purposes now, so I think that would have been that. So I think we lazily went for a gas boiler, but the heat pump was kind of out because of the area of the garden. So yeah.
But also the gas that we have. So we use bulb as our energy supply. So certainly some of the gas, if not the majority of it, comes from renewable sources that we're using in our gas boiler. So that's kind of our justification, I suppose, for that.
Okay. Great.
I think it also depends on whether you are going to consider air source heat pumps as opposed to ground source heat pumps. And the technology certainly moved on a lot since 2015. I mean, there's been lots of progress. So probably more options now for people who are starting out now.
Yes.
Great. So I think we're good for questions. So
okay, good. Let's go on to our last part then, because just looking at the time we're getting on, so we should have a look. Okay, so this is the what went wrong section, and then we'll do the what went right section. So this is kind of the last part. So one of the major things within the first couple of weeks of the builders starting work, they discovered that there was a massive concrete slab all under the side of the house on the right hand side and at the back of the house on the left side, and it was a reinforced concrete slab, and it took them probably a whole extra month of just digging with pneumatic drills, and of course the builders couldn't work for very long in there because the noise was just dreadful, so they had to keep being sent off to work on different projects. So that was a huge issue for us, because right from the very start we were a month behind already
in terms of time and cost.
And obviously it cost a lot more because they had to spend a lot of time getting the concrete out, but they did, and obviously that means that we've had this really excellent
that's the kind of thing when you have an older house, you have a Victorian, somebody mentioned this at the beginning of the chat.
Ed was talking about
you don't know what you're going to do, what you're going to get, and we were open to that already. We already knew they were part of the house that whenever we touched the house, you go in to fix one thing and then the three things you have to fix afterwards. And we knew that opening up a Victorian house is not a good idea, but then we knew things would go wrong, so we're expecting various things to go wrong, and that finding a concrete slab, unexpectedly finding concrete slabs and the whole thing overrunning by a month because of that, is kind of we had to take that and just go with it. The second thing that went wrong, shown in the photo in the middle, so there's kind of three major things that went wrong. Second thing that went wrong, shown in the photo in the middle, was the front bay window arrived in the wrong size. So the window people, they had just, there's just a slip of their writing down. They put the external dimension as the internal one. So it came, they tried to fit it in, it didn't fit in because it was just too large. So here you can see a photo of the entire house is kind of ready. The windows are in, the new door is in, there's a new window on the right hand side of the door, but the bay window is not in still. So it was just covered up. There was kind of a wooden structure made by the builders. It was covered up until various things were happening.
But also at that time as well, because of that, we had to, and because the insulation then, that's a little bit, that's the third one. Yes, I'll talk about this first. So the third thing that went wrong is you could see on here that there's this grey insulation that they're just putting on, and they were starting to do this. And one day we came for the meeting with the architect, and Anne said, "Oh, that's not Kingspan K5, that's polystyrene that you've got on there." And so we wouldn't have known that was the wrong insulation, but they put the wrong insulation on, so that obviously had to be taken off. And the problem was at this time, it was shortly after the Grenfell Tower disaster had happened, and so lots of companies weren't selling or making or admitting that they sold or made any kind of insulation like that. So it was quite difficult to get hold of, and it took several months to get hold of the right kind of insulation. So that took time. So firstly they put the wrong one on, then they had to take it off, and then we had to wait a long time. And a problem with that was that the scaffolding had to remain up on the house whilst that we were waiting for the insulation. So by then we were already living back in the house without the bay window and without the external insulation. But we couldn't have the electricity and gas meters moved outside because those people, the utilities people, don't work under scaffolding. So that took us another delay. So that's something to think about, when you're doing it. You think, oh yes, well, we'll do this. But of course, if you have one delay, something else will then happen, which will then cause something else to be delayed. Yeah. So I think that was it. So that was all our what went wrong. Hang on, I'm just trying to move to the what went right. Oh, here we are. So what went right? So the what went right was, we already said to you, it was so warm when we moved back into the house. It's really warm. We can use all of the house all of the time. We can't, I mean, actually it's so warm that we hardly ever put the wood burner on because we just get far too hot with it on. And so we heat more of the house more of the time. We can use more of the house, but actually our heating bills are lower. Our photovoltaic panels are really excellent. We moved house twice in 8 months, which meant we got rid of loads of stuff, which was a really good thing. And the house isn't damp anymore, which is great. And I have to say, actually, the thing that people most comment on, apart from, oh, you live in that new build there, which is obviously not new, but is the semi-vertical bike rack that we've got outside the front of the house. That's the thing that everyone comments on, which is a really good, kind of another like last minute thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a story because,
yes.
we had, the kids were small, so their bikes would fit into this little kind of a right-hand side of the door, that space. But as their bikes became bigger, it's really hard to kind of think what to do, or our back. There's access to the back, but it's not very convenient for us. So I hunted around, and at this time, kind of Anne, our architect Anne Cooper, really wanted a roof over the front door, and she was just insistent that there'd be a roof over the front door. And actually, the other architect, Jake, he was very insistent that this window be there as well, because to let in light. So anyway, she got her roof and he got his window. And while we were thinking about bike racks, and so I found this one, and we kind of had several iterations about how to put a roof over it, and this is what we came up with in the end. It's a flat roof. Sometimes water gets collected on the top, but it's all right, I think.
And we've got there's a little drain that goes down the corner, which you have to clean out.
But it's a really nice, it's really nice kind of a bike rack. It's normally supplied commercially, in the hundreds. But the company we went with, their names on on our leaflet, on the literature, they were very happy just to supply one, supply three rows.
So actually there's only space for 3 of our bikes, not the 4th one, but that's fine. That's okay. Good. Okay, so just thanks to Anne Cooper and Jake Wybransky at AC Architects, and that's their website. And our house is actually a case study on their website, so you can have a look. And then all the builders, Steve, Calvin, Dan, Andy, and Hayden and Alex at RWD. So that's their website there, which is also again on our case study.
If you do need further inspiration, we do have all of our tours in the resources section of the website under presentations. So you can go back and have a look at all of those. And we do have one remaining tour left, which is the house built in 3 days, which is a prefabricated building that went up very rapidly. So that's on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 20th. And last but not least, Cambridge Carbon Footprint runs these events, and we do somewhat rely on donations to continue our work. So if you are able to donate, please feel free to use the link and donate if you are able. So I think that's all from me, but we do have, oh, sorry, and I should say thank you so much to Zoe and Samin. That was really interesting. It gave me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, lots of food for thought. But that's the kind of formal end, just in case people do need to go off elsewhere. But we are happy to stay on for another 10 or 15 minutes. So please continue posting questions in the chat, and then Nicole will continue fielding the questions as appropriate. Thank you.
Could you show the infrared camera screen again? Thermal imaging poster.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I can. Yeah, hang on 1 second. Share screen. If you go to the events page on our website, it's on there. They've literally just launched them. I know I checked yesterday and they were on there yesterday.
Oh, okay,
so
thank you. I haven't
they've just launched the sessions, and these are really interesting sessions. So you find out how to use a thermal imaging camera, and then you actually get loaned. You can be loaned a thermal imaging camera, and we drop those off and pick those back up in a kind of COVID safe way. So there's one running, the first one is 3rd of November, and then we've got monthly up until February sessions. So I think they should be really good. You know, you can actually practically figure out for your home, you know, where are the biggest leaks, and then hopefully figure out how to plug those and make your own home more efficient. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now, but I'll perhaps post a link in the chat to the webpage where you can book.
I've already linked to the thermal imaging page on the chat, so everyone should be able to see that, hopefully. So great, let's continue with questions. So I think both Ed and Caroline have asked about costs. Would you, Samin and Zoe, would you like to talk a little bit about overall costs, and if you've got any sort of general breakdown, that'd be really
helpful. So the overall cost is around 235,000. So that's in the leaflet already, in the literature already,
and that's everything, including all the unexpected things and the kitchen and everything. Yes, so that's the whole all in. Yeah.
So I would say, like, of that, so you should take that kind of as a really kind of an upper figure here, because of that 6,000 was on the kitchen, for instance. So we stored the kitchen in the garden, and then it was over winter, and essentially it just got completely damp and just fell apart. So we had to get a new kitchen. So, you know, 6,000 of that was the kitchen. I would say probably 20, yes, maybe 10, 15, 20,000 of that were architect's fees and various things like that. So
because also we paid the architects to project manage so there was like a level of service above. A lot of people project manage their own things, but we felt that was the right thing to do, and it definitely was the right thing to do.
So I would still say, you know, sort of in terms of eco renovating a house, an older house, we're still talking about, you know, kind of more than 150,000 pounds.
And I think Kerry Ann also wanted to ask about the most. Kerry Ann, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, thank you. The presentation was fascinating. I'd love to be able to do something like that in my house, because it's bloody freezing.
that's what led us to do it in the end.
It took us a long time, but that's what made us do it.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I don't have the budget to do everything you've done. So if you could only do one small thing, which do you think would be the most effective and well, most cost effective?
I think insulation.
Probably the insulation, like the external insulation and loft insulation. I mean, we literally had no loft insulation at all, you know, so I think for us, it's the insulation, I've got loft, but external is probably what I would need to do now. So, right, thank you.
Great, and Oliver,
I like the windows.
Oliver was asking about the architects. Do you want to unmute yourself, Oliver?
Conflict of interest here. I am an architect, so beware.
You're not wearing a black polo neck jumper, though. No.
He is wearing a black. It's AC and Cooper.
And Cooper. Good.
Yes, so I'm sure you know.
Yeah, so we knew Anne from going. I think her name appeared on several Open Eco Home or Super Home events. I think she gave a talk at some of them or something like things like that.
And I think we've pretty much come to answered all the questions on chat. I wonder if anyone else wants to sort of just join in the conversation now and ask Samin and Zoe anything directly.
Oh, there are a couple of other questions actually. So who are the architects? Having done the project, it's a Byron's question. Is there anything you would have done differently? No, I don't think so, actually. I think, I think we're very happy with where we've ended up.
Yes, I think we would have done it sooner, maybe, but I don't think we had the headspace to do it sooner. But
and then somebody asked, Oliver asked actually, who's external insulation contractors? They were all done. Well, our builders managed all of that.
Yes, but we could find out. It was something a PIT. You know, there was like a
Yes.
It was it was a letter acronym of people who did it. But I can't remember who they were. They were amazing. They're the external guys. They came, they put up the pink insulation one day, and then the next day they put the layer on, like it was on, then the next day was Saturday, they put the first layer of render on, then the third day was the Sunday, they put the last layer of the render on, and it was just, they were so efficient. And they did
PIR or something.
Oh, PIR, yes. I think you're right. So,
Which is, I mean, it's just an acronym.
Or maybe that's just the type of insulation.
It may be the type. I'm so sorry, because of the time difference between Cambridge and London, which is where I'm phoning you from. I missed the beginning of the presentation. I thought things started at 3, so apologies. I'm asking questions you've already answered.
No, that wasn't mentioned. I think it might have been, if you look on the literature.
Yes, it might be on the leaflet, yeah.
Yes, but we can find out if you really need to know.
Yeah.
It was actually quite difficult. I remember it's quite difficult for them to find the
people who were trained
enough to do it.
Yes.
And actually this is something we talked about, if you missed the early part. This is something we really talked about. Getting the right architect and the right builder was really important, and I think really contributes to the, really a bit unknown to us, maybe not. So, you always hear of stories of builders and horror stories of builders. So to us, it was really important to get the right builder. And when we met Steve from RWD, he really completely understood what we were trying to do. And he, for instance, he insisted that the windows go in first so that he could then put insulation, avoid cold bridges between, between the frames and the walls. So, and he insisted on that. And the window guy was not happy with that, because he said, oh, normally I come in and I put the windows on afterwards. But he was very insistent on that. So, getting the right builder in who understands, what we're trying to do, what you're trying to do is very important.
Yes.
And you get horror show architects, of course, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Byron, do you want to unmute yourself? And then after Byron, we'll take a question from Emily as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the air tightness. Do you have a measurement or reading?
No, we don't actually, but it's something
we should do. Yeah.
Because having done the ECP one, I was going, okay. But actually the air tightness, and I should sign up for the thermal imaging as well, actually. So that'd be a nice thing for us to do ourselves. And now that it's winter, we could see hopefully the heat not escaping. But yeah, so yeah, we don't have any measure for air tightness. All I can tell you is that it just feels really airtight. The house feels airtight. It is the quietness of the house inside is amazing. You just open the window and you just then suddenly hear the outside world.
And just another quick thing, on the ground floor plan, you showed the blue insulation line.
Yep.
Around the fireplaces and where it's like abuts the party wall, I noticed there wasn't any insulation on that side. Was there?
Yeah. So in the plan there wasn't, and actually that was one of the things that kind of, when they were doing the walls, I had this thought that, oh, hang on, shall I mention the area around the wood burning stove? And I said to Anne, and the entire house is sealed like a box now, apart from this part of the wall. She said, do you want to do it? And I said, well, might as well. And so we had to get the people who Ivett and Reed, who installed our wood burning stove. They came in, uninstalled it. The builders then kind of insulated in that area. And then Ivett and Reed came back and installed it.
And reinstalled again, it.
Yes. Yeah. So actually the plan is a bit wrong. It is a bit dated there. In fact, there is insulation on that side as well.
Okay, thank you.
No, that was good. Yeah.
Could you say a bit more about the damp proofing? Why did you have to do it, and where did the moisture go after you kept it out?
It stays in the wall, apparently. So all of the walls that have that, you saw that plastic stuff with the red dots on, the moisture now stays in the walls behind that plastic stuff. And apparently if it stays in the wall, then you're okay.
It's just not climbing the wall.
It's not coming out of the wall. So we're all right. As long as it's inside there, then that's what they did. Yeah.
Sorry, Emily was asking about grants. Emily?
Hi. Really good presentation. Yes, I just wanted to know whether you had any grant support for any of your measures.
No,
sadly not. I don't think anything's available now for those kind of things.
Or maybe they are now.
Maybe they are again now, but they weren't. Oh, Oliver,
They
do you know
weren't at the
there
time. I had a follow-up question. Just I asked about the EPC, and really what I'm trying to kind of get at is, you know, I really appreciate or understand why you've done everything just to improve the comfort of your home, but in a way, it seems frustrating that you can't necessarily get a measurement of the improved value that you've added.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yes,
Yes, it is. I mean, it's
yeah.
just obviously the system is not designed to cope with what we have. You know, the way they measure it is obviously, you know, they're measuring what they can measure rather than what they should be measuring.
But it's even worse than that, because they're not really taking into account of any information that we can give them.
Yes, because we could give them lots of them, but they don't believe us. I suppose we could give them the plans, but they wouldn't believe it. I don't know.
They're in the plan,
yes.
so
yes.
I mean, you're right. Yes,
it is frustrating.
It's a very the EPC thing is a very superficial kind of measurement.
Yeah, but I feel like, you know, the terrible thing for homeowners is of course you want to improve your home for a whole host of reasons, but what you're not seeing is necessarily an increase in your value. Is that fair to say? Like if you were to sell the home on, you know, you have an anecdotal evidence that yes, of course we've increased it. It is a warmer and more efficient home, but you're not really seeing that translate into a higher.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could, people have asked questions about the air tightness and thermal imaging.
Yeah,
so you could have that, I suppose.
We could show that as evidence.
I guess there's just no standard. There's no piece of paper from somebody from the government
at the minute. I mean, I'm just sort of just strictly talking about it as a conversation point. I fully intend to do the same thing.
It's really worth it.
I think like various things we mentioned, we didn't do solar panels in order to get money back from anybody.
Sure.
We did solar panels because we wanted to use the electricity that we generated ourselves to do things inside the house ourselves. And we didn't do all these things in order to get a certificate or to get, with these, because it makes sense ecologically, and it actually makes sense for the comfortable, for our own comfort as well.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much.
A lot of these things don't make, like solar panels, they don't make sense financially. It's a more than a 20-year payback. But it makes sense, I think, in a lot of other ways.
If there's a power cut, would you still be able to use your electricity you've generated?
No, because
presumably because of the AC/DC converter.
The converter would go down.
Would run on, because that
runs on mains a bit, I suppose, unless we had a battery.
Okay, so if you have a battery, which you said the prices have gone down.
Yeah,
you've done it and made it more accessible. Presumably that could kick in to keep things going.
Then we could go off grid, which
there was a
yeah.
So I think batteries are, I don't know what they're like 4K, 8K.
Because we looked at the size and how much we needed, and then how much they would cost. And our I don't know whether you said this earlier, I mean, I can't remember. Our energy supplier is offering half price batteries if you qualify for certain, I don't know. But anyway, so we're hoping to get one from them. So at half price. So then it makes it a lot cheaper. EMR.
Yes, Oliver. I've just been searching through our photos. It's EMR did the render, did the insulation. So there's called EMR renders and wall coatings.
We've actually got their phone number on the van as well. We can send you.
I'm sure you can find it now.
Yes.
Oliver, did you want to unmute yourself to open up the discussion a bit more broadly?
Were you inviting me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. So we had a very interesting, I live in Rustat Road, and we had an interesting conversation started in our neighbourhood association about envisioning a future and what do we want as a community. And one of the speculations that we were starting to explore only recently was the question, can we begin a kind of self-help community where we co-invest in the entire built estate of the street passing on sort of knowledge, and maybe even some kind of self-financing model, as you know, everybody could club together with expertise, but also, you know, those with assets could help the others with less good assets, you know, and really try and create something which is transformational on a community-wide rather than a project-by-project basis. And my question is, you know, is that an idea that has a currency already elsewhere in the world or in CCF, or can we explore whether that's a, you know, genuinely realistic?
I think that'd be great. Something like that would be great, actually. I often think, because we've lived on our street. I'll give you a slightly different example. We've lived on our street for I think 20 years now, and we first lived in a small 2 up, 2 down kind of a Victorian terrace. And when we had our daughter, our first child, everybody else had one child, and then they started moving away because they wanted bigger space. And I often thought, oh, why don't, like, street by street, you could get together, because people want to live in these, you know, Victorian houses because of the lifestyle and, you know, being near to shops and things like that. And people want to live there. So you could almost like this is a kind of a slightly mad idea, but get together and street by street, give every terrace another floor, right? So it's like a loft extension. Yeah, yes, or yeah, every terrace has a loft extension, and somehow you finance it. I don't know how you do that, but everybody would be up for doing that. Yeah. And similarly, street by street, you could give, you know, you could put external insulation in, right? Because right now you can't do that on a house, terrace houses which are fronted on the street, on the pavement. So you can't do that. But if everybody did it, then, you know, then you'd be back to square one. So it would be fine by the planners, you know, perhaps. They just have to, you know, close their eyes for that 3 months, 3 months when everything changes, right? But then everything will be back again.
I thought you were about to say you're going to swap all your children.
Well, that possibly.
I think ours are fine. We're happy with ours, actually. Yes.
I think there's certainly potential for sort of community scale and certainly larger scale transformation. But, you know, trying to get all the relevant sort of actors to play their role, I think that will be the tricky bit, because I think with the transformation that's needed in the UK, we definitely will need government support to do things on a much larger scale. Street by street would be great, but, you know, why not entire towns and villages?
I mean, I think the answer to that sort of lies in, is it Paul Giddins' principle that we can't rely on governments for this kind of action, and that actually grassroots is what's going to ultimately create communities that are self-interested enough to try and shape their environment. Maybe that's a bit political.
No, I think that's right.
I suspect that's about right as well. But anyway, I'm going to close the session now. It's great to have had discussion, but it's 15:15 now, so I think time to close. But thank you everyone so much for coming. I hope it was of value. Just to add, there are Green Home grants. We did run a session about it. You can watch it again. I've put the link in chat if anybody wants to look there. And hopefully we will see you again at another Open Eco Home session at some point. And thank you so much to Zoe and Samin again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.